For staying tuned to this channel, welcome to International Forum, the first edition of the year 2023. Well, it is all about what is happening between Russia and Ukraine. Taking a look at the war, it started last year, February, and the war still rages on. But this time around, we're taking a look at the winter effect or the winter factor. Don't forget that winter is already on. People have been having so much to say about this war. When we talk about the winter period or the winter season, yes, it is here, or let's say there with them. But the war is getting hotter and hotter. Both sides don't want it to back down. Everyone giving out their best so that they can really know what is really happening in that particular region. Talking about the war between two nations, Russia and of course Ukraine. With me here in the studio to talk more about this, to talk about the intricacies, to talk about the matters arising, the events unfolding, and of course the way the war is tilting towards, which direction is it tilting towards. We'll take a look at that also. Join me to welcome Barrister A.B. Thomas, a legal practitioner, public affairs commentator, both local and international politics is well grounded. Barrister, welcome to International Forum, and of course, Happy New Year to you.
Good morning and Happy New Year to you and viewers at home.
All right, so you've been monitoring this, you've spoken a lot about this, but there's a new factor right now to consider in this conflict: the winter effect. Before talking about other parameters that can be used to measure the efficacy or the virality of the war. Take it up from there.
Well, the winter period in both Ukraine and Russia is playing a very crucial role, a bit in favor of Russia in this war. Why am I saying the winter period is in favor of Russia? The winter period is a period that both countries are suffering serious cold, snow, cold, and sometimes falling snow, like rain. And this slows down the movement of troops and equipment. So if you look at the way the war is being fought now, while the winter has slowed down considerably, the victorious sweep of Ukrainians on land, the Russians are happy that the winter has slowed down the advance of the Ukrainians, both in the south, particularly in the Kherson area, where Russia was forced to withdraw in November, and in the east, where you have both the Luhansk and Donetsk Oblast areas. So Russia has now been able to divert their own attention to the east. The eastern part of the war is the area that Russia was able to liberate 60% of Ukrainian territory close to the Russian border. Now the Ukrainians who are trying to force the Russians out of this eastern part of their own territory are having the weather, the winter, to fight as well as the Russians. And besides having to fight the Russians, having to fight the winter, you also have the rebels. Those are called the rebels, who are Russian-speaking Ukrainians, who are in Luhansk and Donetsk regions. The areas that Russia says they have annexed and amended their constitution to make as part of the Russian Federation. So why Russia is saying we are defending this area because it is part of our territory, 90% of the entire world does not recognize the referendum that was purportedly conducted by the Russian government around August, September, where they said they got overwhelming votes that Russia should annex Luhansk and Donetsk regions in the eastern part. Whereas it would have been easier if there were to be no winter at this period.
Yes.
For the Ukrainians, with the kind of weapons they have now, compared to 2014, when Russia was able to help the rebels in that oblast, that is the region, where Russia was able to help the rebels to resist the central government in Kiev, that is the Ukrainian government in Kiev. Russia was able to help them, and those ones declared their own autonomy. But with the beginning of the invasion on February 24th, Russia was able to push it further. But now that the Ukrainians are better armed, they have better equipment, they have better weapons, better trained, and they have also foreign fighters joining them. But the winter is acting as a catalog, asking as a hindrance, because most of the weapons that the Ukrainians have are the old Soviet weapons that are now being replaced by Western weapons that are modified to be able to fight at any weather. But the Ukrainians need more training to adapt to these kind of weapons. You can see the pivotal role the HIMARS is playing. The HIMARS from America, from Spain, from Germany. These are high-tech weapons that can be fired with precision from a distance of about 50 to 80 kilometers, and with precision to get the target. But now these weapons are still being useful. But if you fire them in the eastern part of Ukraine, where we are talking specifically of Donetsk, Luhansk regions, and Zaporizhia, which houses the largest nuclear plant in Europe. Part of Zaporizhia is under the control of Russia. Particularly this nuclear plant, which is the largest in Europe. Now, the movement around those areas are difficult, muddy and snow-laden. So it slows down the movement of the Ukrainian progress. So because of this, the Russians also know they cannot move well because of the winter. So Russia is now beginning to use long-distance weapons, like missiles. They have a lot of missiles they are using to target the very important infrastructural projects or the infrastructure they have in Ukraine. And what are they doing with this winter? Is to destroy. So far they have destroyed 75% of the electricity facilities. The electricity facilities in Ukraine. And this is winter, where the Ukrainians need a lot of energy to heat and keep themselves warm. They need electricity for communication between civilians and between the high command and the troops. But Russia is now using long-distance weapons from inside Russia and from Crimea in the south, seized by Russia from Ukraine in 2014. They are using these long weapons, no longer trying to use infantry or the tanks or armored fighting vehicles, which cannot move because of the effect of the winter. So they are now using missiles that goes from the ground, either surface to air missiles or air to surface missiles, or from the sea to the ground missiles. So they are using these long missiles to go over the land. and destroy mostly the civilian infrastructure, not military targets. 75% of the energy facilities in Ukraine has been knocked off. 75% of the population does not have access to electricity. 75% of the military equipment that requires electricity cannot. So they're not looking for countries like Nigeria to buy generators. And these are people who are not used to electric generators in their life. So suddenly electric generators have become something that has become
value
or high value to generate electricity that can be moved more by once. And right now, the Ukrainians have very highly sophisticated surface-to-air missiles.
We'll come to those weapons at the disposal of the Ukrainians, but Russia was accused of weaponizing winter. I mean, is this what is at play right now in the war between Russia and Ukraine?
Definitely. Like I said at the beginning, I said winter is working to the advantage of Russia. So Russia is weaponizing winter because they have now seen that if it comes to ground war, they are no longer able to match Ukrainians. Because when this peace treaty of 2014 was signed in Minsk, Russia thought it was a sincere treaty. Whereas the former Ukrainian president has come out to say, even Mikhail, the former chancellor of Germany, said the reason for signing that treaty was to allow Ukraine to be better equipped. But in talking of equipping Ukraine, nobody ever took into consideration the effect of winter. So it is now that Russia has now weaponized winter by using highly sophisticated and destructive missiles, and Iran helping Russia with kamikaze drones. So these drones are not fighting on the ground. These drones are flying in the sky, bypassing the effect of winter and wreaking havoc on civilian infrastructures like electricity, railway system, water projects, all in an attempt to make the Ukrainians suffer in this winter and probably rise up against their government and say, we don't want this war anymore. But unfortunately, the Russians have underestimated the resolve of the Ukrainians in fighting independence. Like I used to say here, if you say education is too expensive, try illiteracy. Try illiteracy, ignorance, and see how expensive it is. The Ukrainians have seen that, look, instead of accepting Russian defeat because of this effect of winter, we are dying out of cold. We would rather fight for our independence and die for the independence and die out of the missiles that the Russians are firing. Because the main purpose of firing 120 missiles a day is to cripple the social infrastructure in Ukraine and make the civilians suffer and rise up against the government. But instead, after every effect of the missiles, you see Ukrainians in their windows singing, glory to Ukraine, glory to Ukraine. They are still singing in spite of their suffering. I can't imagine any country in the world today that will have 75% of their electricity power destroyed, and they are still singing victory to or glory to Ukraine.
Now, if you take a look at the situation right now, like what you rightly said, 75% of the infrastructure vis-a-vis power, rail, water supply, even the internet controlled by electricity is like, down. Do you think that the winter, even weaponizing the winter now, do you feel that this may deter the soldiers, the civilians, even the people on the offensive to continue with this offensive rather than going back to the families to protect their families against the effect of the winter?
Well, if you look at the war as it is going in the eastern part of Ukraine, particularly around Bakhmut.
Yes.
There's a place called Bakhmut.
Bakhmut, yeah.
At that place, it is only about 1 kilometer or 2 kilometers. It's like street fighting between Ukrainian troops and the Russian troops. And the rebels they are backing. Rather than going backwards, the Ukrainian troops are moving. So both sides are now in a quagmire. They are not moving forward, they're not moving backwards. They are fighting, nobody's withdrawing. It's no retreat, no surrender. And thanks to the new form of uniforms being supplied by NATO countries, the European and the NATO countries led by America. America so far has spent over $90 billion.
But I'm saying it's not free. Ukraine is going to pay back the money.
Look, Ukraine cannot pay back all this money because Americans know what they are doing. When Soviet Union collapsed in 1991 or 92, one of the agreements that was signed between Russia and NATO was that NATO will not expand east-west.
This treaty, yes.
Towards Ukraine.
Ukraine or Russia.
Sorry, towards Russia. But now, what do you find? When Russia discovered that Georgia, which was part of the old Soviet bloc, was becoming pro-Western, they invaded
Georgia.
Yes. Now they found that Ukraine is now going pro-Western. They invaded Russia. They invaded Ukraine. So what is happening is that America is saying, look, this is a war between authoritarianism and democracy. For the Americans, particularly the Democrats in America, it is worth spending hundreds of billions for if it has to be for democracy. So what Ukraine might have to pay back at the end might be allowing America to have some foothold in their country.
And Russia wouldn't like that.
That is what Russia is fighting against. Russia is fighting against that, look, you'll be too close to us for comfort. If the Republic becomes a threat to Nigeria, I'm sure Nigeria will attack the Republic.
All right, some of the opinion that since Ukrainian forces are advancing towards the Donbass region, it is posing a great threat to their own capital. Don't forget that Kiev is under severe fire. Kamikaze drone, which you rightly talked about. Don't you think that is a miscalculation when you talk about the method being used by the Ukrainians to defend their own country, leaving the capital unprotected?
In actual fact, they're not leaving their capital unprotected. 2 days ago, the Russians fired 87 missiles, including kamikaze drones from Iran.
Yes.
The Iranians were able to destroy 60 mid-air through their air defense system. But they cannot get all of them 100%. So they are defending their capital. They are also defending the second largest city, Kharkiv, to the north of Ukraine. Kharkiv is well defended by the air defense system. But you must understand this, that when you are talking of modern warfare, no city can be covered 100% by air defense system. That is why Israel today is spending hundreds of billions of naira of dollars in encircling the entire Israel with air defense system, particularly the dome that protects any flying object. Otherwise, Iran would have helped the Palestinians with hundreds of missiles to destroy Israel. Dicto in Ukraine. Ukraine was not prepared for this kind of war. They were not. The kind of air defense systems they had were the Soviet-era air defense systems. So if you are firing 120 missiles at, say, the capital Kiev, and the Iranians are able to destroy 100, I think it is more than 80% success.
But the thing is that it is more than your own calculation. They are saying that it was a massive shelling. They use the word massive shelling. Yes, some were taken off the radar, but most of them got to their targets.
Not most. Few of them got to the targets. Even if it is one that gets to his target, the sheer destructive nature of one kamikaze drone is enough to make a whole city surrender. Not to talk of missiles coming from the sea, from the east, from inside Russia itself. That is why Russia is now looking for a way for peace. Because initially, the agreement between Ukraine, the European countries, and NATO was, we will not give you any weapon that will make you attack inside Russia. But on their own, the Ukrainians have been able to develop their own weapons. Now look, if you are destroying our country, if you are destroying our social infrastructure, you cannot have a right to remain in Russia and be unscratched. Because if Russia remains unscratched, the citizens will not feel the effect of the war. And because of that, there will be no uprising in Russia. So we have to try as much as possible. Last week, they were able to take their own drone, not supplied by America, not supplied by Britain, not supplied by Germany. They were able to make their own drone travel 300 kilometers from Ukraine into an air base that houses nuclear bombers inside Russia. Because they cannot move because of the effect of winter. So winter is helping Russians and slowing down
the advancement
of Ukrainians. So they still have to find a way to survive. The important thing is that we are also happy that the European countries have set up a development fund for a post-war reconstruction of Ukraine. So it will be difficult. Which countries are actually supporting Russia? There's a limit to what Russia can do. The countries supporting Russia today are Iran,
North Korea,
the outcast North Korea, China on the other side supporting diplomatically. But America is keeping an eye on China not to supply any weapon. Because the moment China decides to supply weapons to Russia, it becomes a very difficult war.
All right. Now let's take a look at countries supplying weapons to Ukraine. You have America, you have Japan, you have Germany. Even, let's say, Poland also supplied jet fighters. Those, like I said, don't try that. Keep it on your own country. But weapons were given to Ukraine by various countries that are members of NATO. Do you think this may provoke China to support Russia via supply of weapons?
I don't think so.
Because right now, we have precision equipment, precision missile right now supplied to Ukraine by the U.S. And you think an ally of Russia will just keep mum?
The ally of Russia you are talking about
is China.
Is the no? I don't. You see, China, whatever role China is playing today, is what let Bola Ige we call Sidon Look. They are doing Sidon Look in China. But openly, they are diplomatically supporting China and supporting Russia. Let me tell you why Russia is refusing to supply weapons. There are two major reasons. One, there was the Olympics in Beijing. And America was already sounding out the entire world that from satellite images, Russia was going to invade Ukraine. Russia kept on denying. Even Ukraine joined in the denial. Now we don't think Russia will do that. Meanwhile, Russia sent in over 20 battalions of troops to Belarus in the northern part of Ukraine. And Belarus is a satellite state of Russia, led by Lukashenko, who dances to the tune of Putin. But there was never a moment that Putin, who was in Beijing, he never told the Russian president, Xi Jinping, that he was going to invade Ukraine. But America kept on saying, the moment the Beijing Olympic ends, Russia will invade Ukraine. So, it was to the surprise of Russia, of China, to find that everything America was saying became true. You were with me last night. You danced with my wife. The next day you plot my removal. Or you desire to slap me. That is the kind of feeling the Chinese have. The Chinese may not be friends to the Americans, but they are not ready for a European and a North Atlantic embargo
organization, NATO,
or sanction on China. They don't want that. There are so many equipments that the Chinese produce that requires some chips or parts from the NATO countries. So China is careful.
So you're saying it's bad for business if China should...
It's going to be bad business for China. But China is behaving the way they are behaving right now in public because of Taiwan. The way America is behaving with Taiwan, and the Americans for the past 100 years have been saying we recognize that Taiwan is part of China. One China slogan. But don't forget that the Speaker of the House of Reps in America, Pelosi, who will be stepping down today, visited Taiwan to the provocation of the Chinese. And the Chinese had to send in almost all their weapons they had to intimidate Taiwan. Till today, America is still supporting Taiwan, sending highly sophisticated weapons to Taiwan. And there are so many islands in the Pacific Ocean that are being disputed by the Asian countries around China.
The Pan-Pacific Ocean.
Yes.
That region, yes.
But America is supporting those who are contesting those islands with China. Many of them are rich in oil. So the Chinese are not happy. So publicly, they tend to support Russia. But at the same time, they are looking at the geopolitical balance. If America becomes very influential in the Pacific region, it will affect China. If America is able to defeat Russia through the NATO alliance with Ukraine, it will affect the balance of power in Russo-China relationship. So publicly, the Chinese appear to be supporting Russia. But they know that everything that is going on, the Americans are watching. It's like Big Brother Nigeria. Big Brother is always watching. America is watching through satellites to see if any weapon would leave China to go through Russia. A third country to Russia.
Now let's take a look at propaganda. Yesterday, get to see Zelensky saying that over 400 Russian soldiers were killed. Russia saying no, it's not up to 400. Let's say 36 of the soldiers. 66, yes, were killed. It's like, everyone just keep on churning one form of information or the other to support their mentality or their will towards this war. What's your view on that?
Well, propaganda is part of war. I remember when I was in primary school, primary 6 precisely, when there was this Nigeria-Biafra war. Okokondem, who was the chief propagandist of Biafra that time, who said, in Radio Biafra that they have already passed Ore. They are heading towards Lagos, whereas they were in Midwest. And the federal government will say to keep Nigeria one is a task that must be done, that they are already in Enugu, whereas they are in Asaba. So propaganda is part of warfare. It's the old method of warfare. But what you find is that when a dog bites a man, it is not news. But when a man bites a dog, it becomes CNN News. The fact that Ukraine can fire some HIMARS missiles, and that Russia is admitting for the first time since the war commenced in 2014, they called special operation. And the whole world knows it's a war. The Russians are admitting that 67 of their own top flight soldiers have been killed. It means Russia
there's a game changer somewhere.
There's a game changer somewhere. So Russia is no longer the superpower we are thinking they are. Because ordinarily we would have been thinking that Russia by now would not even be sending soldiers to the war front. They should be able, as a superpower, and quote, be sending some machines that will go, not human, some robots, to go and be fighting. But they are not admitting that 67 of their soldiers were killed in just a day. Then it means that the Ukrainians are trying. The Ukrainians might be suffering heavier casualties. The Ukrainians are Lilliputians in this kind of war that is being fought by proxy. You might kill 500 Ukrainians in one day. But the fact that the Russians are admitting that in one day we have lost 67, and the Ukrainians are saying, no, it's not 67, it's 400. Believe whatever you want to believe. Ukrainians, because of the size of Ukrainian army, the size of their military hardware, compared to the Russian Empire. Then kudos to Ukraine.
But I think this may lead President Vladimir Putin to re-strategize and take the war to a more decisive level. Now, if you look at winter, according to what you said, and you're absolutely correct, is aided somehow the Russian military operation in Ukraine.
Yes, I can see a situation. Quote me, I can see a situation where the ailing Putin, who is the most moderate among the leadership of Russians, cannot stand and keep on losing. Because in history, I did modern history. I studied a bit of it. Where dictators and authoritarians begin to lose grip of power, they will use any weapon
at their disposal.
Putin knows he has threatened that he will use nuclear weapon. I can assure you he will never use nuclear weapon. Because he knows the moment he presses one button, there will be many buttons coming from everywhere. Russia will be destroyed. He himself has committed suicide by that action. What I am suspecting is that by the time this winter is over and the Ukrainians gather their momentum and begin to go towards Crimea, and the 4 regions that Russia says they have annexed through their parliament are being taken over by Ukrainian forces, who will now be able to move with the new weapons that America has promised, the new weapons that other Europe, particularly Britain has committed over £4 billion into this war, while America has spent over $90 billion. By the time these weapons arrive, and with the kind of new uniforms they are giving to the Ukrainian troops to withstand the winter, when summer comes in, the war will be so fast that Putin will not want to lose. I foresee the use of biological weapons.
Biological weapons?
Which has been banned by the United Nations. Because you'll be pushing the man towards the wall, and he has to fight back. And when that happens, and I pray it doesn't happen, when that happens, of course, you expect NATO to react. And if they do alike by firing biological weapons into Russia, then there will be a third country that may want to come into Russia to assist Russia and might lead to a third world war. But we don't pray for that. But I can assure you, biological weapons might be used. I use the word might be used if Russia is unable to take Luhansk and Donetsk in the eastern part of Ukraine completely in this winter, which is hindering the movement of the Ukrainians. This is the time Russia should do it. This is the time, whatever weapons they have, not nuclear, not biological, any infantry weapons they can get, even if it is surface to surface missiles, which they are already using. Because they will soon run out of targets inside Ukraine. They have destroyed almost everything in Ukraine. 75% of Ukrainians don't have electricity. You will soon do it that the winter will begin to fizzle out. Then they begin to survive. Last week, an Australian who has been fighting on the side of Ukraine, an Australian 24-year-old Australian soldier was killed. And I didn't know Australia. You look at the distance from Australia
to Ukraine.
So many people are leaving to go there. The area the Russians withdrew from, they call it withdrawal. Yeah. They ran away from Kherson.
No, they call it tactical withdrawal.
They tactically ran away. Yeah. Tactically ran away from Kherson. Right now, they are now focusing on Kherson. They try to destroy everything in Kherson. To the extent that the Ukrainians are now giving out cash and train for people to leave Kherson. They are doing that because they are afraid that Russia might get to the stage of using biological weapons on Kherson and destroy Kherson. But Russia to use biological weapons in areas of Donetsk and Luhansk, they will be afraid because this is something that goes with the air. Biological weapons go with the air. And in an attempt to, if you throw a stone into the market, you don't know who hit. So they are going to be careful using biological weapons in Luhansk or Donetsk. So the area that they can use it easily is the Kherson region. Zaporizhia, they know if the biological weapons damages any of the equipment in the nuclear plant, that would be a terrible disaster to the whole of Europe. And nuclear weapon, when used, the wind can blow anywhere.
It'll be fallout.
There will be fallout. So the wind can even take it back to Russia. So the best place is, when I say best, unquote, is Kherson area. You cannot go and use it in Kharkiv. Kharkiv is the second largest city in Ukraine. And it's very close to the border with Poland. When there was a missile strike into a village in Poland, Russia panicked. While Russia was saying, no, we didn't shoot. The Ukrainians were saying, no, you fired it. In an attempt for Ukraine to draw in the NATO.
The NATO in 2 ways. Yes.
Because Poland is a member of NATO. So they're not likely to use any biological weapon close to any of the countries that are members of NATO in order to bring in the wrath of NATO. But NATO has already drawn a red line. Don't use any of the weapons banned by United Nations. So I see a situation where Russia will want to throw in everything during this winter to get the whole of the eastern region of Ukraine. So that by the time it comes to summer, Russians will be saying, look, we have been telling you we need peace. We want peace. Let us come to a peace conference. Then they will now be talking from position of strength. We are ready to stop this war. But you see, by the popular vote in quotes.
They want to be part of Russia.
They want to be part of Russia. So let Ukraine forget this eastern part of Ukraine, which has been voted and approved by the parliament to be part of Russia Federation, because they are Russian-speaking people. Let us leave it that way.
All right.
But Ukrainians also see it, that is what is going to happen. So they want to quickly liberate that area from the occupation of Russia.
All right, now, if you take a look at what is going on right now, it's like we are in the heart of winter, though it has reduced a little bit. Do you see an actual end to this war? Because it started, like what you rightly said, 24th of February 2022, and the war is still raging on. How do you think this war will be resolved?
Well, it's a complicated war. If it was a war between Russia and Ukraine, simpliciter, the war would have ended long ago. But this is a war that is going to define or redefine the map of Europe. For instance, before the war, Russia was responsible for 70% of energy supply to the whole of Europe. This Gas Stream 2 pipeline that passes through the North Sea, through to Germany, Britain, and others, the construction has been stopped. Europeans are looking for alternative sources of energy. Russia is now looking for alternative buyers for their oil and gas. The Europeans are saying there's a cap on the price of Russian oil. So a lot of things are coming in. So it is who will blink first. And who will blink first is certainly not going to be Russia. Because the way Russia is fighting down, the way the propaganda is going on within Russia, and by yesterday morning, Russia has declared martial law in all the territories in Luhansk and Donetsk and part of Russia.
In the Donbass region.
They've declared martial law. So it means they now have right to forcefully mobilize more troops. And don't forget there is that Russia is almost like a continent of its own. So there are areas of Russia that doesn't even know that there's war going on. But conversely, Europeans are not used to too much suffering. This war is costing Europeans a lot of money, a lot of inconvenience, a lot of fear. So the first set of people that will rise up to say, look, enough of this war are the Europeans. Because of the effect, if you are in England, for example, you will see the cost of heating gas. It has gone up by over 150%. In Germany, the same. In France, the same. In all the countries of Europe, the same problem. Even Croatia, that joined European Union 2 days ago, they are already beginning to feel it because they have changed their currency to euros. So people are now asking, is it wise to have joined
the euro on this period?
During this period of war? Yeah. So it is Europeans whom I suspect might blink first.
Now, if they blink first, Donbass region, is it going to belong to Russia, or Zelensky will say we'll fight to finish?
As for Zelensky, every inch of Ukraine must be liberated. But the Americans are already telling Zelensky, look, this is no longer possible. The cost of liberating the whole of Ukraine and Crimea will be so much that the whole world economy will suffer for it. Because monies that could have been used by European countries and America for development in third world countries will be channeled towards
the war.
The Chinese are already suffering it. Now they are now facing another wave of COVID.
COVID-19, yeah.
COVID in China. So the Chinese are not able to pour in money into the corrupt African countries as they used to do. They are now spending more to protect their COVID
Stricken citizens, yeah.
So you find that the war on one side, COVID on one side, then the unreasonable internal crisis in Africa
On the other hand,
which nobody is even interested in. Because Africa is of no strategic importance to those in Europe. So by the time you see all this going on, you find that the only way, in fact, there is no war that has ended with a total military victory. It has to be, you come back to a conference. So I see a situation where during summer, if, I use the word if Russia is not able to take good advantage of this winter and capture the whole of eastern Ukraine, Russia might rush to Guterres, the Secretary General of United Nations, to call a peace conference in the UN.
All right. Thank you so much, Barrister A.B. Thomas. You've lectured for a while. I just call it a lecture because we went through, the war, the supporters, the game players, the game changers, what was being supplied, and of course, how it's going to end via dialogue, because people are saying this war, if time isn't taken, may just be an unending war. Let's see what the end of the winter will bring. Is it going to bring a bad negotiation? That's a question on the lips of so many persons. Barrister Thomas, thank you once more. And of course, Happy New Year to you. All right, we'll do it next week, Tuesday. God willing, bye for now.